How does a small-town boy grow up to become America's most popular artist? The journey begins and ends in Watertown, South Dakota, with a side trip to Minnesota for education and the beginning of his career. This journey is the life story of Terry Redlin. Wherever he resided, his heart was always with nature, wildlife, and memories from his childhood. Born on July 11, 1937, the simpler life of living on a farm and later in a small town had an enormous impact on Terry's life. You can see those memories throughout his paintings, especially Lights of Home, one of Terry's favorites. He always began each of his tours with this painting.
When I was really little, we were coming out of the Depression, and so there was virtually no money in the family at all. And so when you had a light on the house, anywhere, when you left that room, that light had to go off immediately. So there was never any more than one light on at any time for one person. But there's only one time that you'd have the house lit up, that we'd turn more than one light on, and that was when we were going to have a party, or people were coming over to visit some company. And the dog knew that immediately. Our dog would run to the front door, I'd let him out, and he'd run right out in the middle of the street, and he'd sit and wait. He'd be looking down the road, because he knew somebody was coming, because there was more than one light on.
Terry's love of art and his natural talent were evident at an early age. It didn't take long for his family to take notice.
My mother has a story that I was really being a rowdy in the house. I think I was about 3, and so my mother put me down with some crayons and the newspaper, the funny papers. Grandmother came past an hour later, and I was still busy drawing, and she goes, "My God, Daddy, get in here quick. Look what he's done." And so I could take and I'd blow up these drawings, you know, but they're all in proportion.
Terry described his childhood as idyllic, but that innocence was lost when the motorcycle he was riding was hit by a drunk driver. Not only did Terry lose his leg, he lost his dream of becoming a forest ranger. Now he had to think long and hard about an alternative career. Destiny offered a hand when the state of South Dakota offered Terry an academic scholarship made available to disabled students.
They sent a person to the house, and they sat down with my mother and me, and he said, "Do you have any idea what your son would want to strive for in his life?" And she said, "Well, he wanted to be a forest ranger, but now that's out." So she said, "He wants to be an artist." And I kind of looked up like that, you know, and when she said that, and his look on his face was just like this. He went, you know, like, "Oh my God, what a waste of money. You know, what a waste of money that's going to be." But okay, if that's what you want.
Terry married his high school sweetheart, Helene Langenfeld, in 1956 when they were both 19, and they left for Minnesota so Terry could attend the St. Paul School of Associated Arts. Instructor Cecil Johnson gave students an assignment to create a simple drawing of any subject. Terry drew a Cocker Spaniel. When Cecil showed the drawing to his wife, she fell in love with it and wanted to buy it. Terry wouldn't take any money, but gave it to them as a gift. It was Cecil's wish that it would one day be returned to the Redlin Art Center. When his nephew presented it to Terry, he told him that his uncle's first reaction to the drawing was, "There is nothing I can teach this kid about drawing. He has more talent than any student I have ever taught or will ever teach." But to Terry, he learned valuable lessons in art school that he used throughout his career.
I don't want to waste a lot of time painting over the lines I painted. So it's just a little bit of sketching here and there, and then I draw as I paint. And I learned that way back in art school. The professor, one of the things he said that stuck in my mind was, well, don't waste all your hours drawing an intricate drawing and then you end up painting it too tight and there's no looseness at all. Learn to draw as you paint. Just like you draw with a pencil, you can draw with a brush. And that really stuck in my head. And I thought, well, that makes sense. So that's the way I started out. So I keep it very simple. I block it in darks and lights, and then just start working back and forth over the whole scene. I never stop at any one scene to finish everything off.
Upon graduation, Terry landed a job with Brown and Bigelow, sketching drawings sized for the back of playing cards. But after 2 years, he was homesick and missed the outdoors and hunting and fishing. The Redlins returned to Watertown, and Terry put his talents to work as a draftsman for an architectural and engineering firm. In January of 1967, he had the opportunity to work as a designer at Webb Publishing, so he and Helene, along with their 3 children, moved back to St. Paul. He went from designer to illustrator to layout artist to magazine art director. His close relationships with some of his co-workers at Webb developed into lifelong friends. They called themselves the Groundhogs, and one day they gathered with Terry's son Charles to reminisce about their friend, Terry Redlin.
I think Terry is one of the most resourceful men I've ever met. And he was kind of a role model for me, without a doubt. You know, I would see what he could accomplish. He accomplished more with one leg than most people would in 2 or 3 lifetimes with 2 legs. And he's just resourceful, but motivated and productive. He's one of the truly most inspirational people I've ever met.
In 1975, his good friends Dick and Bob were let go from Webb as part of a first-ever restructuring. It had a profound impact on Terry's outlook for his own future.
Webb had never fired anybody up until that point. In fact, I remember them going into charity work when times were bad to generate work so they wouldn't have to fire people. And he was so shocked with that because it had never happened before. It just took him back because he said, God, if they can fire them, they can fire me. But yeah, that was the biggest motivator for his career.
At that point, Terry embarked on a 5-year plan to become an independent wildlife artist. While still working at Webb full-time, he spent all of his spare hours outside, observing and photographing. Pencil sketches were his way of practicing what later would be seen in a painting. Many of those drawings are on display throughout the gallery. Finally, in 1977, at the age of 40, Terry's first painting was on the cover of the Farmer's magazine. Winter Snows appeared on the cover. But more importantly, an ad inside for Terry Redlin prints really got the ball rolling. Orders started pouring in for his first open edition print, Apple River Mallards. Terry worked 120-hour weeks, days spent at Webb, and the rest of the time, Terry and Helene worked on matting, staining, framing, and shipping hundreds of orders from their Hastings home. His big break came at a local wildlife art show.
Dayton's in Minneapolis put on their first wildlife art show. It was just kind of like timing. They hadn't had a large art show before, and I'd heard about this. I'll never forget the Sunday morning from Hastings when we were driving into town with the car all loaded up with paintings. I stopped halfway in. I wanted to turn around. I was getting so scared. I was just totally chickening out, you know. I just didn't know what to think it was going to be. I was scared to death. Well, anyway, we did get in and set up the show, and it went so well for us there. Oh, that was so exciting. That was really great.
By 1979, the demand for his work became so great that he left his job as an art director to concentrate on painting wildlife full-time. In the early days, Terry's art focused around wildlife and landscapes with incredible detail and realism. His love of hunting and fishing was now being expressed on canvas.
I live to hunt and fish, and I really don't hunt anymore, but I get the same thrill and feeling when I'm painting, and I'm right back in the woods, and that's the fun of it. Favorite animal is white-tailed deer. No question, but I love those animals. And as far as the waterfowl, you know, the ducks are great, and then geese too. But white-tailed deer is the favorite animal.
In 1987, Terry began exploring his interest in Americana subjects and nostalgic scenes of yesteryear. These paintings evoke feelings from his childhood and tell the stories that his grandmother shared around the dinner table.
When I had myself more established, then I diversified out, and that was always the plan. So I did pretty much exclusive wildlife scenes, really. It's landscapes with wildlife in them as touch. Now I'm doing more Americana, and I've started this some time ago now. I did my first big transition with Coming Home. That was the first piece that I had no wildlife in at all.
As his career progressed, his paintings began to revolve around the light source of a scene. Whether the light comes from a lamppost, a sunset, or campfire. This brilliance defines a Terry Redlin painting.
Everything's based on light, everything that you see. I've had paintings where I start out with the sun over the left shoulder, and the painting ends up, I've put it over here instead and changed everything, you know, made it the shadow areas instead of the light areas, just because it made a better composition and a better mood. Usually there's a little of the purest white you can get, but it's the intensity of the surrounding colors that gets it to look like it's glowing. I only work with the basic colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, and I mix everything from that, my blacks and everything. So the whole painting is just 3 colors, is all it is, really. But it, you know, with those 3 combinations, you can make a million hues of it, you know.
During this 1998 interview, Terry was working on toasting marshmallows. It's a rare glimpse at his process and how this painting looked before it had Terry's final touches.
Honestly, I really don't have any formula. It just comes. I have in my head what I'm after and the kind of a mood, an evening mood like this one, and it's kind of fun to balance the light that's coming off the moon with the fill light from other areas of the snow, and then the more intense, brilliant light that's coming out of the cabin and the Christmas tree bulbs and the fire. And see, this area here right now is not balanced off. This part of the painting, it's getting into the balance with the moon, with just a very touch of the lighting here. But then there's things that have to be done between the fire, the Christmas tree lights, and the house lights. The intensities I have to get in a better balance. Right now they're all the same, and this whole area is kind of fighting with itself, is what it amounts to. But when I get done, it'll be a dominant one, and I frankly haven't decided which I want to make more dominant at this point. Probably the fire. I'll make that more dominant. Then I'll cut back on some of the others and keep those maybe a little smaller and simpler. Things like right here, see, I haven't even put in the color down in the crack in the open water yet. Things like that. Then the children will be balanced out a little better. They won't be much tighter than this. I like them loose. I don't want to have to see eyes and nose and mouths and everything. No, it's the attitude of the figures that you try to achieve. And you can get a whole language in the attitude of the kids. Like these 2 kids here, when I get that completed, they'll have the feeling of they're seeing the deer. The moon on snow and the whole scene is quite cool. It's a cool light. And what gives you the depth is everything outside this area and around is bathed in the cool light, and then you're using all the warm orange and yellow lights from the fire and the house inside and the Christmas tree lights to illuminate all this. And the fun is see, this isn't completed yet, because the fun of balancing is to get that perfect transition from the warm lighting here to finally go over, and that's not quite done yet. It's got to be a smoother transition into the cool, cold light here. And so that's why you see a little of it coming now. But it's a transition from warm to cool, and then you have to be careful so you don't get the green kind of balance in between from the blues to the warm colors. There's a tendency for that.
The result appears as if someone turned on the lights. The dimensional aspects of Terry's work are so evident in the final painting. Details pop out that were barely visible in the early stages of the work. That's the signature that millions of Terry Redlin collectors have come to appreciate.
Being an illustrator is all part of the whole thing. Yeah, this is like fine art illustrating in a sense. Because I'm illustrating a story at the same time, illustrating a mood and a feeling, put it all together, and yes, it's an illustration, but like a fine art illustration.
Terry's son Charles recognized Terry's unique talent and had a plan to preserve his father's legacy.
Chuck came to me one time when I was signing prints and sorting, and he said, "Dad, what are you doing with the originals?" And I said, "Well, Chuck, you know, I sell them." He says, "Oh, why don't you start hanging on to them? If you just don't sell them." He said, "I've got some great ideas for the future, you know, to maybe have a museum long after I've died, but it all starts with hanging on to the originals."
I wasn't content to wait around until he died. I just didn't want to have that. So anyway, so then I kind of start pushing him a little bit more.
The Redlin Art Center got its start in 1985 when Terry stopped selling his original paintings, but it took over a decade for the doors to finally open in 1997. Other sites had been considered, but Terry felt that both he and the Art Center needed to come home to Watertown, South Dakota. The $10 million facility was Terry's way of repaying the $1,500 scholarship he received from the state, because without it, his family would never have been able to afford to send Terry to college. All proceeds from the Art Center's gift shops are used to support the operation and maintenance of the Art Center, since it was Terry's wish that admission remain free to visitors. Charles designed the Art Center and worked with contractors to fulfill his vision. Terry's love of the outdoors prompted him to plan the layout of the extensive park and trails that stretch out in front of the center. It was Terry's hope that guests would stroll the 30-acre conservation park and walking trails that surround the Art Center. In addition to selling reproductions of Terry's work, the gift shops offer numerous figurines, home decor, and keepsakes using Terry's artwork. These products have become wildly popular, but Terry himself was originally a skeptic.
Bill, my rep, kept after me. He said, Terry, he said, you know, there's a whole thing there about what he called 3D art, 3D art. And I wasn't quite sure what he meant. And he said, well, you know, the figurines, you've got everything, models of things. And I thought, how in the world could we do something with 3D from the prints? I just, nah, I don't want to bother with it. I don't want. So I put him off for a couple of years. I said, no, absolutely, I don't want to bother with it. I want to just paint. So finally I broke down and said, well, okay, go ahead. And I loved it when I saw it. I thought, well, now I know what you're talking about. You know, hey, I like that. That's nice. You put up the print, you got the little 3D of it beside it. I like that a lot. So I said, okay, go ahead, go for it.
Over 160 original paintings now hang in the Redlin Art Center, a testament to the talent, perseverance, and hard work of this remarkable painter. He was a very humble man and couldn't believe that people would come from far and wide to see his art. Yet millions of people have enjoyed the painting, sketches, awards, and stories that lie within the Art Center walls. Terry has been honored many times with art awards and was inducted into the Watertown and South Dakota Halls of Fame. Sioux Falls, South Dakota even named an elementary school after him, which Terry found ironic since he was known as Windows Redlin by his teachers for spending so much time looking out of the classroom windows and daydreaming of being outside. His commitment to wildlife conservation prompted him to support organizations that share his passion. His work generated over $40 million for Ducks Unlimited and other wildlife conservation groups. South Dakota and DU named a game area after Terry in recognition for all his contributions. As much as Terry enjoyed the outdoors, he was also a proud American and cherished the veterans that defend our freedoms. His first love story for the country was depicted in the 8-painting series entitled America the Beautiful. Each line in the first stanza is used to create what he called a tribute to the country I love dearly and that has treated me so well. This series represents his passion for the country's ideals and values that resonate with so many Americans. His final patriotic series was both fulfilling and extremely difficult to complete. The very personal series, An American Portrait, was released as a tribute to veterans and their families. The series was 9 years in the making and blends Terry's own childhood with his personal experience of losing brother-in-law and close friend Charles Langenfeld in Vietnam. His process of painting various pictures at one time probably contributed to his ability to finish the series. The final picture brought back painful memories of Charles's death, but being able to paint other images during that time gave him some relief from the intensity of the project.
I've always got at least half a dozen or a dozen paintings in the works, rotating. And so it gets up to 4 to 6 months before I see that picture again. I think, might be done, I don't know. And then I'll take one look, I go, oh my gosh, Redlin, that whole thing is wrong, or that balance isn't right, or this isn't complete looking, or this is too much. Simplify, you know, things like that. So you need the fresh eyes.
Terry spent many enjoyable years in Watertown with his beloved Helene. They were able to live out a life together that began in high school and ended back in Watertown, living on the very lake Terry fished as a little boy. In 2007, Terry retired from painting after being diagnosed with dementia. His 9-year struggle ended with his death on April 24, 2016. He is missed by his family, his many friends, and of course the fans of his art. He appreciated hearing their experiences of how his art had touched their lives. Thousands of people had the opportunity to enjoy signing events at the Redlin Art Center with family-friendly events, concerts with nationally recognized recording artists, and fabulous fireworks displays. But for Terry, it was meeting the people, signing his art, and making them happy that made it all worthwhile.
The object of what I was doing when I started out as a commercial artist and then turning as commercial illustration and art director, then being able to paint on my own, and I want to please people. I'm a people pleaser. I did what I wanted to do, you know, by pleasing a lot of the people and that they enjoy the work. And that's kind of all of it really for me.
Though the voice has been silenced, Terry will always speak through his paintings. It was how he told stories, fantastic, heartwarming, memorable stories. These are his stories, his family's stories, and our stories. We invite you to roam the Art Center and lose yourself in the art and life of Terry Redlin.